Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tradesman Experience. This is the podcast built by tradesmen for tradesmen. My name is Josh, and as you know, my favorite thing to talk about is leadership. It's also something that I'm always looking for in people, and when I see it, I immediately want to know what they know. And if I'm lucky, then I'll get to sit down with them and have a conversation. The man I've invited to be here in the virtual studio today is someone that I have known for almost 40 years. Growing up together in a small town as neighbors in elementary school and junior high, graduating classmates of 1999 with a hodgepodge past of four-wheeler riding, motorcycles, hunting, and even he was one of my clients in my first HVAC business. Beyond that, he served in the Marines, chose a career in law enforcement, is a husband, a father, a friend, a devoted Christian, and honestly, one of the toughest guys that I know. The guy that I've invited here today is in Fort Worth, Texas, Mr. BJ Jones. BJ, thanks for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
You know, I had sent you a message, and the reason I'd sent you a message about inviting you on here is because, I mean, social media allows us to observe people through a filtered lens and from a distance. And you're the first and probably the only classmate that I'll ever have on here. But you know, when you see people that you've known your whole life, I'm not easily impressed. But watching you through the years and the past that you and I have, I felt that there was conversation here, and I felt that you could add some value. And that was really why I wanted you on here, is because I respect the person that I see, the man that I know and have known almost my entire life. So we can start, we can go back. I actually threw in a little bit about us growing up across the street and being neighbors, and we can turn the clock back as far as you want. But let's start that off. Tell us who you are.
All right. Well, like you said, we grew up in a small town. I mean, if you want to go that far back, when it would rain a lot, we would the house right next door to you had a good sized ditch in it, and big enough to where we would swim in the ditch.
Man, I forgot all about that.
So yeah, I mean that was a good time, and
yeah.
You know, all the neighborhood kids would come and jump in that ditch, and it was an older couple, and they didn't mind a bit by having all the kids out there swimming in the ditch.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That was they were right next to us, and you were directly across the street from us.
Yeah.
I know we moved into that house somewhere around in the late 80s, probably around 89. Did you move in before or after?
I think we so my mom and dad divorced, I think, whenever I was around 5. So I got my brother Toby is just 1 year younger than me, and she was a single mom. She bought that lot. There was an empty lot there, and she moved a trailer on that lot. Upset a lot of people in that neighborhood because it was a nice neighborhood, and all she could afford was a trailer. So yeah, I grew up poor, and but I mean, it didn't stop us from having a good time, and just because back then, it didn't matter if you was rich or poor. Everybody was outside, until the streetlights came on. So
that was the rule, and we lived a block away from the elementary school, so that playground was our playground.
Oh yeah, yeah. I terrorized that neighborhood growing up. We won't go into all those stories. We'll be here all day if we get into all that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. When I was thinking about this interview, I was actually surprised in how much I remembered. Honestly, how often our paths crossed.
Yeah.
in a lot of different aspects of life. After high school, again, whether we were on motorcycles, I know we've been hunting together before. I was kind of surprised. I'm like, man, there's always this. Seemed like there was a lot of parallels with us growing up, but maybe that's the benefit of the small town. And our graduating class was what, 118, 120 people, maybe.
Yeah.
Pretty small. But we can fast forward a little bit from there because we will be here all day. Where would you like to start?
I mean, I got to start out after graduating high school.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what kicked it off for me. And, after high school, I went to John A. Logan Community College for a year for criminal justice. At that time, man, I was drinking a lot, smoking a lot. I was not getting passing grades, and I'm very blessed that I was able to realize that I needed discipline in my life. I had no discipline. I was on a bad path, and I was able to recognize that after a year of community college. So I decided to join the Marine Corps.
What was it that made you recognize that? I mean, are you able to articulate that now because of hindsight, or did you just recognize that you needed something?
I think what made me realize it is I went to a wedding reception and I got blackout drunk and didn't remember anything, and then had people tell me what had happened uh, the night before, and I was just ashamed. And so it was at that moment I was like, I'm joining the Marine Corps. And my stepdad was like, well, have you considered any of the other branches? At least talk to the recruiters of the other branches. And I said, no, if I'm going all the way. I'm going to the Marine Corps. I recognize that I need discipline, and I believe that the Marine Corps is going to provide that for me.
It's interesting because one of the differences is our household had a lot of disciplinary measures, and
oh yeah, I remember your dad. Yeah, I was scared to death of him. Of course, who wasn't?
Right.
He was a massive man.
So I think that's what fascinates me, is that attraction to discipline, because I was so not attracted to it because of the upbringing. I think that's kind of awesome. Now I'm come full circle. Like, I think it's one of the most impactful characters and qualities that you can have as an individual is self-discipline. But it's fascinating to know that at a 19 or 20 years old, you had some sense of awareness to know that you needed to choose a different path. And this is, when I look at our time frame, like, this is probably the biggest gap in us being around each other or knowing each other, was after high school. And there's a big gap before our paths crossed again. But
yeah, it would have been after the Marine Corps.
Yep, it would have been after. So from that blacked out party till boot camp, how long was it?
Not long. I don't remember what MOS I had chosen for the Marine Corps. MOS being the job that you're going to do within the military. But a guy I was going to John A. Logan with just got out of the Marine Corps, and I was talking to him in between classes, and I told him I said I'm getting ready to join the Marine Corps, and I told him. He was like, "Oh, what West are you going into?" And I told him, and he was like, "You'll regret it." He said, "Go infantry," and I was like, he said, if you're in the Marine Corps and you're not in the infantry, you're nothing. And I said, all right, then I guess I'm going to call the recruiter right now and tell him I'm going infantry. Because if like I said, if I'm going all the way.
Mm-hmm.
And what's crazy is he is when I got out of the Marines and got into law enforcement, I found out that he was in law enforcement in the same county that I got hired in. And then we worked in law enforcement together once I got out. It
Mm-hmm.
was pretty awesome.
How long did you serve?
4 years.
Okay.
So in July of 2000, I sent off to boot camp. In boot camp, I did not. My goal in boot camp was to be unnoticed. I didn't want to step up and be a leader in boot camp. I wanted to keep my mouth shut, do what I was told when I was told to do it. I did not want to stand out. I saw real quick what the leaders like. If you were nominated to be a squad leader or the guide, it was not good for you, because when one person messed up, you were usually paying the price with them. And so in boot camp, I wanted to be as unnoticed as possible. And that's exactly what I did. Matter of fact, when I graduated boot camp, when the drill instructor was calling roll call for graduation, he literally said, "Is there a Jones in this platoon?" And here I am in the back. I was like, "Right here." He's like, "Where have you been at this whole time?" Being smart.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that 1 year of college allowed me to graduate boot camp as an E2, a private first class.
Got it.
So I was already an E2 upon graduating boot camp, and then of course I got my first tattoo as soon as I graduated. I got my devil dog tattoo as soon as I graduated, and then I got shipped off to the School of Infantry after a short visit at home. Went to the School of Infantry in San Diego, California, Kent Pendleton. Now in the School of Infantry, that's where I was like, all right, now it's time to step up. So when I enlisted, I went in 03 open, which is your infantry, and then they will select what job in the infantry you're going to be based upon your ASVAB score and what you did, and then also your physical size. So I found out in the School of Infantry that I was going to be a mortarman, which is an 0341. So in the School of Infantry, I excelled. I was the fastest on the gun. I was the fastest getting the gun set up, and also as far as weapons knowledge goes, all of the written examinations I scored top of the class. So I was meritoriously promoted to Lance Corporal E3 upon graduating the School of Infantry. I graduated top of the class.
Why do you think you excelled so well when you were put into an environment of structure and discipline? Because I'm guessing it would have been a culture shock from where you went to going in there. I'm just curious, like, why do you think that you excelled so well?
I honestly have no idea.
I mean, you just Forrest Gump it, just do what you're told, drill sergeant kind of stuff, or?
I just, even like growing, even whenever I was little, I was very organized and very, just very detail oriented.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some things that are just God given that you don't. There are some things like leadership, you're born with it, or I mean, you can learn aspects of it, but there's a lot of it that is just, you are just given at birth. And I believe that I just kind of naturally excelled at doing that stuff, certain things like that. I don't know why.
It's interesting.
I can't explain it other than just God given. There are just God-given talents and things. There's gifts for everyone. Everybody
Mhm.
has a gift, uh, and it's just whether or not you recognize it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't have a gift of being detail oriented. It's a discipline that I've had to constantly work on. And even to a point where I can allow outside factors just to accumulate mess, for lack of a better term, and I know that I need to stop. I need to address it, organize it, go through it, be detailed, and it sets me up for success. But that is very difficult for me. I don't come by that naturally.
Right.
It's like sandpaper for me. It doesn't fall within my superpower. So I think that's interesting. But so E3, then where?
Yeah. So yeah, after you graduate the School of Infantry, they tell you where you're going to end up being stationed and what unit you're going to join. They told me I was going to be in 1st Battalion, 2nd Marines in Jacksonville. That's all they said was Jacksonville. And I'm thinking, well, the only Jacksonville I know is in Florida. I'm like, well, that's exciting. Heck yeah, I get to go to Florida. Well, it wasn't long after that somebody broke the news to us that it's Jacksonville, North Carolina. Camp Lejeune is in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and there's nothing there.
Humidity, right? That's about it.
Yeah, a lot of humidity,
Mhm.
and they do have sand fleas in that area. So, but yeah, it's the one good thing about Jacksonville is that it's only 2 hours away from Myrtle Beach, and that's where I met my wife. So,
Got it.
yeah. But yeah, you would think that being a Lance Corporal going into the fleet and joining your unit would be a good thing. I quickly realized once I joined the fleet and joining my unit that being a Lance Corporal among your squad leaders, the guys that are in charge of you, they're Lance Corporals, and they've been in for 2 years, and they don't like a boot drop
Mhm.
coming in as the same rank they are. So it was. I endured a lot more hazing than the other boots did, just because I was the same rank they was.
Full
Uh,
benefit.
huh?
Full benefit.
Yeah, if you want to call it that. uh, so yeah, I mean, as soon as we got to the fleet, um, we pretty much within a few weeks we started drawing gear to go to Bridgeport, California, and do a winter warfare training in the northern mountains of California, um, where gets down to -30, and you're hiking up a mountain with skis and 100-pound pack on your back every week for 3 months. Uh, it was brutal, and of course, and then when you're a boot on top of it, you're the one dragging the sled up the mountain with all the gear on it too, with your 100-pound pack on your back. When I got back, my calves were just like huge. That's the only benefit that
That's
I
the benefit.
remember getting out of that. But yeah, so I mean, as far as the hazing, there was a lot of hazing going on then, but I took it as a rite of passage.
Mhm.
Uh, I didn't. I just sucked it up and did whatever I needed to do, kept my mouth shut. Um, and like I said, I just
Mhm.
took it as a rite of passage. While we were in Bridgeport, though, one of the senior machine gun squad leaders, he got drunk, and then for whatever reason, he had it out for me. He didn't like me. He called me back to the back of the little squad bay we were all sleeping in, and he decided he wanted to wrestle or fight, and I told him not to do it, but he was intoxicated, and so we did it, and he got his feelings hurt. Uh, and then, of course, the next day he needed to get his pride back, so he at 6 a.m. he was calling me to take the trash out and do different
Mhm.
stuff to so that he could reassert some kind of dominance over me. I just humbled myself and did it. So
What? Because I know you before. When did you realize that keeping your mouth shut was probably a better idea, or was that just you wanting to fly under the radar? Or, I mean, because when you think about Marines, it's authority, it's discipline, and the things that you're talking about, and for you to have that level of either maturity or humility or maybe just stupidity, I don't know which, of just just shutting your mouth and doing it. How did you come up with that tactic? Because it seems a little counterintuitive to a
right.
lot of behavior.
Again, I'm not real sure. I just I knew that I wanted to excel. I knew that I was where I was supposed to be, and I wanted to be the best Marine that I could be.
Got it.
And that's been my mentality. I mean, I started working in fifth grade. I was delivering newspapers in fifth grade. I've had a job since I was in fifth grade, and it didn't matter what I did. And still to this day, it doesn't matter what I do. If I'm shoveling manure, I want to be the best manure shoveler there is. There is nobody going to be better at it than I am. And so in the Marine Corps, where it's just you have to submit to authority and you have to do what you're told, and that structure. I mean, that was just part of it. Like part of being the best is being disciplined and respecting authority and the rank structure within the military.
I think that is, to me, that shows that a lot of people are just lacking structure and discipline in their life. And if they had that exposure or they had that introduced to them, how well they could elevate themselves. I think too often they look at structure, they look at discipline as being limiting, as opposed to it being elevating or promoting. So I think it's I think it's awesome that you thrive within structure and discipline. It says a lot about you as a person, and clearly the Marines was the best choice for you. I just think that a lot of people, their ego get in the way, and I'm speaking from experience. I mean, I I had a lot of years, especially in my 20s, where my ego ran my mouth, and you weren't going to tell me what to do. So I think it's pretty awesome that that you have that experience and you were able to recognize that in the moment.
Well, that being said, I will. There was a lot of arrogance and cockiness that come along with that. That was especially in my 20s. I mean, I would tell you that I'm the most humble person that you'll ever meet. There's nobody more humble than me, I can assure you.
Yeah.
So, but so so as a boot, as a young Marine, I just, I did what I was, and that also helps you excel, is whenever you're not a complainer, doing what you're told when you're told to do it. Don't be crying about, this and that. There's a lot of things that are really stupid. I mean, we all recognize that it's stupid, but don't cry and complain about it. Just do it. You're crying and complaining about it is not going to make you not have to do it. So I actually got every platoon in the company selected one Marine to compete in a meritorious corporal board, E4. And this was before I hadn't even been in 2 years yet. And so I got selected, the one Marine out of my platoon, to compete in this meritorious corporal board. And I won that board. So I was meritoriously promoted to E4. I was a corporal. I had less than 2 years in the Marine Corps, which is a non-commissioned officer. So I mean, that's almost unheard of in Marine Corps standards. It's very rare that that happens. Um, and then Scout Sniper tryouts were coming up, and I was thinking about going Scout Sniper. And so I went and knocked on my section leader's door and asked him who was going to be taking over as section leader when they left, because they were going to be leaving pretty soon, and we were going to get our own boots, and we were going to be the section leaders and squad leaders of a new drop. And he said, "You're going to be the section leader whenever I leave." So I decided to stay because that was the highest billet that you could achieve within 4 years. So that's what I decided to do, was to stay. And I became the section leader. And then we got our boots. And I remember one of the boots. I'm gonna leave names out.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, one of the boots. He came in super cocky and acting like he was God's gift to the Marine Corps, kind of like I was, except I didn't. I respected the rank and authority. He did not, because the story that I was told when he first got there is whenever he was in SOI, he started mouthing off to one of the instructors at the School of Infantry, and that instructor said, "You want to take it to one of these back rooms?" And he just said yes, and then so he actually ended up getting the better of that instructor, and so he had a chip on his shoulder. And so when he got there, he thought he was tougher and badder than everybody. So, and I've always been a scrapper.
Mhm.
I love to fight, and
Mhm.
so I told him, I said, pick out one of your fellow boots. I don't care what size they are. Pick the biggest one. I said, as a matter of fact, I recommend you picking the biggest one, because I'm going to take both of you at the same time. Both of us, two of you versus me, bull in the ring in front of the barracks in the morning. So he grabbed one of the machine gunner boots, and if in bull in the ring, everybody sits in a circle. You sit back to back. There's no standing, and then it's grappling and submission moves. And so it was the two of them, and he's not a little. He was the same size I was, and then the machine gunner was bigger than me. And so, but I tapped both of them out, and so I earned their respect,
Mhm.
and I had no more issues out of him after that.
I mean, I wish that there was more of that. Let's just be honest. Like, I grew up in the trades, being hazed and getting to do all of those things. And it's not about winning or losing. It's about earning respect.
Yeah.
It's not about beating people down. And I think a lot of people get that wrong. It's not about doing that and showing you that I'm better than you. It's about doing that and earning your respect so we know where we sit. And now that I have quote unquote won, these are my expectations of you. What are your expectations of me, and how are we going to move forward? Like, we're on the same team.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously it's a lot more welcomed in the Marines than it is a construction site, but I just think the simple act of having that gladiator mentality, especially in the 20s. And this is something that I try to work with in leadership and with owners all the time. I said, listen, you have to understand, like, when you've got young guys on your team, it's tribal instinct to challenge the leader. And if you've got team members that are not challenging you, you should be asking why that's happening. Our survival depends on it. We have to make sure that we're following the strongest leader. Now, whatever method you determine that on, or you measure that, that's up to you. So I think it's interesting. Now, saying all of that, out of that, I'm assuming, but what was your relationship with that individual moving forward, or what was the respect moving forward?
We got along great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I had my squad leader. I was a section leader. So in my section, we have 3 squads of mortars. I have 3 squad leaders and then a gunner and an ammo man per gun. And, I remember, I don't remember what they were doing or what they did wrong, but everybody had messed up. And so as punishment, we went on a front gate run from the barracks to the front gate and back was 10 miles. I didn't want to run 10 miles. Well, you're punishing yourself too. Well, yes, in a way, but I was setting the pace. But my squad leaders were puking. Everybody in the section was puking. I mean, I was miserable, but I wasn't puking. I'm setting the pace. But it's whenever you mess up, there has to be discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And without it, you have nothing putting you back on the rails, and to do the right thing. I remember telling my squad leaders, "Hey, we're going on a front gate run in the morning. This section's been messing up." And they were like, "Yeah, let's not do that." I was like, "Oh, we're doing it. So start hydrating now."
There's something to be said for clear consequences, disciplinary action when necessary. But in this particular case, you're talking about you involved yourself in the action. And when I look at leadership versus management, that managers don't like to involve themselves in anything but celebrating the victory for themselves. There, respect goes a lot farther when you're willing to, put yourself through it. I look at that as forward moving consequence, right? Where I'm not telling you that, hey, you messed up, so if you don't get your shit together, you're fired. It's like, hey, you messed up. Everybody's suffering. We're going to suffer. And now we get to discuss what we're going to do to improve moving forward.
Right. Well, and that's what makes the military work so well. Because there's so many levels of leadership. When you're in combat, if you hear a general or a colonel say, "Hey, I need you to charge that machine gun bunker. I need you to charge this hill and take that machine gun bunker out." Uh, that private's going to be like, "All right, sir, let's go." And then that general's going to be like, "No, I told you to go." Well, the way the rank structure works in the military is, as your squad leader, I'm in the trenches with you. And whenever I say we need to take out that machine gun bunker, guess what? He knows that you're ready to lay down your life for him as well. And whether he may go with you or he may flank it, whatever the case may be, he knows that you have his back and that you will lay down your life for him. That's the difference when you come into the lower ranks. And the Marine Corps is different. So as an E4, I mean, the amount of responsibility you have is just crazy. As a 19, 20-year-old, the amount of responsibility, I mean, it's life and death responsibility. So that's the difference. And so, yeah, I mean, you're probably not going to, if a colonel gets on the radio and says, "Hey, I need you to charge that machine gun bunker," you're probably going to be like, "With all due respect, sir, let's go at the same time."
Mm-hmm.
He ain't going. But when that corporal tells you, you're going to go.
When did the idea of leadership start to develop for you? And when did you recognize its impact?
I think that good leaders don't necessarily want to lead. they recognize the void. They recognize whenever they people are standing around looking for someone to take charge and get something done. Someone who is a natural leader, just like I said, is just you either have it or you don't. But you recognize, hey, somebody needs to step up in this situation. Let's I need you to do this. I need you to do that. Let's get this job done. So that's, I think, is just natural leadership. Not wanting to be in charge and have authority and power over people, but just wanting to get the job done naturally.
Mm-hmm. Not worried about having authority over people. I think that's big, because a lot of people get wrapped up in the authority. I'm in charge here, right? Like, I'm the boss, I'm the manager, I'm this, I'm that, and they get really wrapped up in their title.
Yeah.
And now they have allowed themselves become more important than the team and more important than the goal or the project or the mission. And I think when that happens, it's corrosive to the culture and the trust. And eventually you're going to ostracize yourself. And if that individual continues down this path, then they start complaining, making threats, disciplinary action that's not promoting behavior. So the fact that, because I do agree with you, I do think that leaders arrive when they're needed. I think they will be the ones to arise to the occasion, because they know that something needs to be done. And I've never seen a leader sit back and wait for somebody else to do it. They're always the first ones to go. So I definitely agree with you in that aspect. The other thing I think is interesting is people get this concept in their mind that people don't want to be led. The reality is they don't want to be managed. When you can step up and go, all right, this is the goal. I need you to do this and you to do this, and this is what I'm going to do, and we'll get this job done, like you're talking. That's what people want. People want to be a part of that. They want to work as a collaborative. They want to understand the role that they play in achieving that goal, and they just need someone to make a decision.
Yeah. Well, one of the first things you learn in boot camp of law in the police academy. Police academy is verbal judo. Is that you learn that the best way to get cooperation is to not tell somebody to do something. Everybody, every single person wants to be asked, not told. If you just ask somebody, even though you have the authority to tell them and they have to comply, it's better to ask. And so, I mean, that's just one, that's like day one in the police academy is learning how to talk to people and getting them to go along with the program just by asking them and talking to them with respect.
Mm-hmm.
Because people want to be asked, not told, and they want to be talked to with respect, not talked down to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So what did the rest of your Marine career look like?
So we got our boots. My senior Marines exited the Marine Corps. And then we were in, well, actually, let me backtrack a little bit. I was in Okinawa, Japan, doing jungle warfare training when 9/11 happened. So 9/11 happened. Then we're doing jungle warfare training. We came back to Camp Lejeune after 6 months, and then started basically preparing. We knew something was getting ready to happen. In January of 2003, we boarded a ship, a Navy ship, and set sail from Cherry Point, North Carolina, and sailed 5 weeks on a ship to Kuwait. And we stayed in the desert in Kuwait until March 20th of 2003, when the president gave the orders that we were going into Iraq. My unit was the very first unit. We were part of Task Force Tarawa, which we were the very initial push into Iraq from Kuwait. We loaded up on light armor vehicles, which is basically a track. We were packed in there like sardines. We would ride for 14 hours at a time on a bench about 8 inches wide, smelling diesel fumes in the back of that thing for 14 hours. Every time we stopped, we would have to dig a hole, and just to rest for a minute, we had to dig a hole. I swore when I got back I would never touch a shovel again for the rest of my life. So March 23rd, 2003. I don't know if you remember Jessica Lynch, but she was in that Army supply unit that was captured. Essentially, this Army supply unit was supposed to go around the city of Al-Nasiriyah. They missed their turn. They got ambushed and overtaken in the city of Al-Nasiriyah. So the Iraqi fighting forces thought this is just a little Army supply battalion. They were not equipped to fight. But when the Iraqis took them and whooped them and took some of them captive, it really emboldened them. They were like, this is all the Americans got. We can actually fight and we can win. We can beat these guys. Well, little did they know that there's a Marine Corps infantry unit camped right outside their city. We were waiting on tanks to refuel. They were 6 hours behind us. Well, when this Army supply battalion got captured, our lieutenant colonel said, we're going in without tanks. So we rolled in to Al-Nasiriyah. And as a basic infantry guy, I had no clue what was going on. I didn't know any of this until after the fact. So these LAVs have the tops open. We had the sunroof back, and I'm posted up on air security. So we're rolling through the city, and my staff sergeant is in the turret up front, and he rolls around and he looks at me. He said, "Did you not just see that RPG fly right over your head?" And I said, "No." Well, he no more got those words out of his mouth, and that track started weaving, zigzagging, and then all hell broke loose. I mean, AK-47 rounds are kicking up, and I mean, people are running around everywhere. It's just complete chaos. So I started seeing enemy combatants, and I just started unloading magazines. Everybody down inside's going, "Hey, what the heck's going on?" I said, "It's game time, boys." And I'm just emptying magazines, and we got inside the city, and the track, the ramp comes down, and the only cover that we could see and there was a hole kind of dug out in this little courtyard area. Well, it was a human latrine where it was just full of human feces and urine. So that's where what we fought out of for 8 hours. But we set up our mortars in handheld mode. And so the 60 millimeter, I was a 60 millimeter mortar guy, and they are in handheld mode. They're very inaccurate. It's completely up to the shooter's line of sight. Basically, you look over the top of the barrel, you pick out a building, you look over the top of the barrel, and you just line it up with your own eye. And then there's a level bubble on the handle, and when you squeeze that trigger, all 4 fingers, big handle, then that mortar goes out. I shot 180 mortar rounds, all 180 of them at danger close range. It was pretty crazy. I mean, the first thing I did was just get me a big old chaw of Red Man and stuff my cheek full of Red Man. And I think the first half of the mortar rounds, I had no ear protection in. And then I put some cigarette butts in my ear. And then I think my head was ringing enough that I actually got some ear protection in. But, yeah, so it was pretty wild. I had two more rocket propelled grenades fly close enough over to my head that, I could have caught them like a football. That's pretty close to having RPG fly over your head. 3 of them.
Now, when you rolled in, you weren't anticipating this.
No, we didn't. They don't tell you that. They don't tell you what's going on.
That's what I'm trying to put together in my mind. I mean, you guys are just rolling in, and all of a sudden,
oh, we're clueless.
Yeah. Well, that's when training kicks in, right? And
that's exactly right. And people are like, "Oh, was you nervous?" I was not. Honestly, I wasn't even a little bit nervous. It was just like training kicked in, and you're on autopilot. You're just doing what you're trained to do, and that's why they do it. So the initial battle inside the city, I mean, they were ready for us. Our objective was to take the South Bridge and the North Bridge and secure those bridges so that the fighting forces behind us could roll on through to Baghdad. That was our mission. So we ended up, I don't even remember how long we stayed in Nazariya, but I remember they were using ambulances and filling ambulances full of fighting men. And they would drive the ambulances to us. And of course, we used the Geneva Convention. We used conventional fighting tactics. They did not. And this had never been experienced before. I mean, they would use little kids and come out, with their hands up and waving little white flags. And then they would, next thing you know, that kid is carrying RPGs and ammunition from one house to the next. It was pretty wild. I remember, I think it was the following day. I'm in a little foxhole. We've got a road barricaded, and there's a big 1-ton flatbed truck barreling straight to us. It's got plywood sides on the bed. Well, little ports open up, and there's just AK-47 fire just coming out the side, and it's kicking up the dirt all around me. From my left, literally like a full circle around me. It was, and this is the first physical miracle I'd ever seen God perform. It was like there was a bubble over me that could not be penetrated. I could not be hit. Just literally bullets kicking up the dust all around me. It was, and at the time, I'm not a Christian. I didn't recognize it as such. It wasn't until later that I was like, that's pretty wild. And then later in my life, I recognized that was God's protection over me. So the whole time I'm in Iraq, my wife is pregnant with our son. So I had that to think about. But, in battle, I'm not thinking about anything except, our mission completion.
From the Marines, your time, your tours, did you go right into law enforcement? I mean,
no. So, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was getting ready to get out. I actually took some classes to be an insurance agent, sell insurance. I took the classes, passed the classes. I
swear to God, that makes me want to laugh. You selling insurance is
I already had a job lined up.
Comical.
I took the state exam and passed it on the first go in North Carolina. Went to work my first day. Rode around with a guy. We visited a couple, 2 or 3 houses, and then they sent me home on my lunch break. And I called them from my apartment, and I said, "I won't be coming back in. I'm done. This is not for me." So I told my wife, I said, "Pack your bags. We're going to Southern Illinois." And she walked down to the gas station and used a payphone, crying, and called her mom. And, was bawling, crying that she now has to go to Southern Illinois.
Well, I'm glad the insurance thing didn't work out because, like I said, that doesn't fit you, my friend.
No.
So
but I was convinced that I could sell water to a well.
Yeah, I believe you were convinced. Oh man. So that was your relocation back to the home ground then?
Yeah. We moved back to DuQuoin, and the house right across the street, which our middle school principal lived in, and I delivered newspapers to. Her daughter owned the house. It was vacant, and they let us stay there for like $250 a month. A 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house with a basement for $250 a month. It was very nice.
Was that the one on the corner line?
No,
Okay.
This is directly across the street from my mom's house.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we've got a baby, and it's very convenient to have my mom right across the street. And then I went back to school. I finished my associate's degree at John A. Logan, and then I went on to SIU, got my bachelor's degree. That took a little more time. I got really burned out on school. I only needed 3 more classes to graduate, but I took 3 years off to go back and finish it and get my actual degree. I did all kinds of jobs, while going to school and in between there.
That's what I was going to ask you. What are you doing in this time? I mean, you've got the baby, you've got the wife.
Well, the good thing is I got the Illinois Veterans Grant that paid for 100% of my tuition, and then the GI Bill went in my pocket. And so I was making decent money while going to college. I first started, I was delivering pizzas for Pizza Hut. And then I think in 2004, I ended up buying a Cadillac Escalade. And when you pull up in an Escalade delivering pizzas, I mean, my bills were nothing, $250 a month. And here, I'm making pretty good money going to school. And so I'm driving an Escalade delivering pizzas. Well, I found out real quick, when you pull up in an Escalade, people don't tend to tip you very well.
Genius.
So I let the wife drive the Escalade, and then I drove an 85 Monte Carlo.
Okay.
I got better tips than that. It was clean, though. It was clean.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that is brilliant. I don't remember you having that.
Yeah, I had that for a little while.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of cars, though.
Yeah, same. Yeah, same. Terrible habit.
Yeah. But so yeah, I eventually I was working at Coca-Cola.
Can I ask you a question? Coming back from that, and I apologize. To wrap up the Marine story, I'm interested in more in it, but I also want to respect your time and maybe there's future conversations to be had. But something that I'm curious about, going from the example that you gave, being in combat, being in structure, being in discipline, having that, getting out, 4 hours in, you abandon the career option you thought was going to be a good fit. You pack up, you drive back home. You drive back to the small town of Southern Illinois to pursue education, and you're working these different jobs. My question is, how did that impact your mindset and your mentality, and what was that adjustment like?
Well, unlike the military today, of course, they had over 20 years to figure it out. We were the very first ones. We were the first ones in and the first ones out. There was no debrief, for lack of better words. There was no debrief and training on going from military to civilian world. And not only I wasn't just military, I was just in serious combat. When I get back, I got less than a year left on my contract, and I'm a civilian. In less than a year, I am now a civilian. Coming back from war, picking up my friends piece by piece, throwing legs and arms into a poncho and throwing them into the back of a Humvee. And I mean, we suffered a lot of losses, and now here I am, a civilian, completely clueless as to what to do. Other than I know for me, I wanted to get a degree, I guess just for me, just to say, because I wasn't the best at school, but it was more of like an achievement thing for me. I wanted to get a degree. I didn't need it for the career that I wanted to get into. I didn't need military was enough, but I wanted it for me. So no, the transition into civilian life was not good. I started drinking a lot, and I just wanted to fight because that's all I had. I was a trained fighting machine. That's all I wanted to do was fight. I spent a lot of time in the bars and taverns drinking, and I didn't pick fights, but if anybody was around and was getting picked on, I let them know that I was more than happy to step in for them and fight their battle for them. So I don't know how many bar fights I was in from the time I got out in 2004 to probably 2008, 9 area. But there's a lot of bar fights. And I also started, I think 1 year after that first year I got out, I got pretty fat. My wife took a picture of me and my son was in a bubble bath together, and I seen belly rolls, and I was like, oh, this ain't gonna work. So I started going to the gym. I got pretty jacked, and then found some guys doing jujitsu at the SIU Rec Center, started rolling with them, and then I was like, I want to fight. So, and I started, I did some cage fights. So yeah, I mean, I think 5 cage fights. The last one was real short notice. They offered me a title shot for the middleweight, and it was real short notice. I had no cardio, but I was like, I've knocked everybody out in the first round. What do I need cardio for? And but this guy was a little tougher than the other guys. I hit him with my signature straight right hand, and he ate it. And then he ended up getting full mount on me for like the last 3 minutes of the first round, and I had no gas in my tank. And I went to somehow I survived. I don't know how I survived with him in full mount, but I did. And went to my corner and I said, throw in the towel. I'm done. I ain't going back out. He smacked me in the face. He said, you're going back out there. I was like, all right. So I go back out there, pretty quick in the beginning of the second round. He split my eyelid. My eyelid got split open, and then so it was a ground and pound, and that was my last fight. That was in 2011.
So, all right. So when did you get into law enforcement then?
Well, before I get into law enforcement, so that period of a lot of drinking, a lot of debauchery from 2004 till I believe summer of 2009. My wife, I'm drinking until the sun came up, probably 3 or 4 nights a week, and my wife started going to church, and I always had an excuse not to go. Well, eventually I ran out of excuses, and so I decided to go. Went to a little non-denominational church, Liberty Church in DuQuoin, Illinois. I go to church, and it's like every single thing the pastor is saying is directed directly at me. It was super weird. And so when we left, I asked her, I said, "Did you talk to him before I came?" And she said, "No, I didn't say anything to him." And I said, "Okay, well, that was really weird." And so I went back the next week, and it was the same thing. Everything he was saying, I just felt like he was just directing it right at me, like he knew something. And so I kept going back, and then eventually one morning, in the summer of 2009, they were singing "Amazing Grace" at the beginning of the service, and how sweet it is God saved a wretch like me. I once was blind, but now I see. And my heart was I thought I was having a heart attack. My heart was about to just pound through my chest. I thought I was going to pass out. I was resisting the Holy Spirit. I had been resisting God. And then I finally just said, "Okay, all right, Lord, you can have me. I've been doing things my way. They're not going well. And I'm going to surrender everything to you." And so I just fell on my knees. I was bawling, crying. I wept like a little baby in front of everybody and just said, "Lord, you can have me." And man, after that, I was on fire for God. I did a 180. I went from just complete wretch, did a complete 180, and just started living for God, living for Jesus. I wanted to scream Jesus from the rooftops. I was telling everybody about Jesus and what he did in my life. And none of my immediate family wasn't Christian. My friends weren't Christians. And so my fire lasted a few years but started to dwindle. I read the Bible cover to cover. I was still praying. I was still very much, wanting to live for God. And then, but in 2012, I got on with the Murfreesboro Police Department. So I didn't really have any Christian mentors in my life to take me under their wing. So I was kind of doing it on my own. And so I was just going to church on Sunday. And then I get into law enforcement in 2012. And man, being a police officer is crazy. Like, you're dealing with the bottom of the barrel, the scum of the earth, day in and day out, and it will eat at your soul. It's pretty crazy. But but God did some pretty awesome miracles while I was uh, a police officer in Murfreesboro. I was awarded 3 lifesaver awards and a medal for heroism. I can get into a couple of those if you want to.
Yeah, I do, because I also know. So you moved there in 12. I moved to that same town at the end of 13. So we were in that same town. Very small force, very small
Yes.
police force.
Murfreesboro is little. Mm-hmm.
It's little. It's underpaid.
Yeah, big time. Whenever they offered me the job, I remember like getting really excited. I was, because at the time I was on unemployment, and I remember calling my wife on the way home saying, "Oh man, I'm getting ready to I'm going to be making, I think it was like 27. I'm going to be making $27 an hour." And then when I got to the house and actually looked at the paper closely, I was like, "Oh, wait a minute. There's an extra number in there. That's my annual salary." And then I looked at my hourly rate and I was like, "Oh, how is this possible?" I was making more on unemployment.
And a little bit of context. It's not the best town.
Oh no. For a little town, there's a lot of crime.
There really is
for a little town. Yeah.
We dealt with it. We had our vehicles were broken into, I think, 5 times, and then at one point we had well, I didn't realize it until the next morning, but we had somebody walk in our back door the night before. Yeah. And I found, I don't know, gift cards or something in the driveway. And I was married at the time, and she was like, "Hey, this gift card and your driver's license are in the driveway." I'm like, I always know where my wallet's set. It's set in the same place on the counter every day. Then I realized that we had some stuff by the back door missing. My computer and backpack was one of those things. So we had to file a report. And then another time, she goes out to go to the garage, and there was somebody, probably same person, but somebody hiding in the bushes. It was waiting for us to probably get on the other end of the house or kill the lights or whatever. And she just happened to disrupt his plan. He jumps up, has got some kind of mask on. She screams. Well, I start searching the neighborhood, which you're not going to find them, but it was a bit of a shithole. I mean, that town.
That's probably the best analogy for it. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of crime in that little town. I got to ask you a question, because out of respect, your wife, I've met your wife. She's a wonderful, wonderful lady. Mm-hmm. How did she put up with your bullshit for all of that time?
God. I mean, honestly, she wanted to call it quits, and she actually called her mom and was expecting her mom to say, "Yeah, come on back home."
Mm-hmm.
And her mom said, "No, that's your husband. You're going to stand by him and get him through this." So probably, and then, a good mother-in-law. And then also, she was going to, that's whenever I think it was at that time she started going to church.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever after she had talked to her mom and she realized that her mom wasn't going to take her back in, she started going to church. And then her going to church got me going to church. So, yeah.
Got it.
Most, believe me, most women would not have been there that long. in putting up with the things I did, and how this is not bragging. I don't know how. I'm not sure how I was able to work, go to school full time, and pass my classes and train for fighting and drink the way that I was drinking. Of course, the Marine Corps makes you really good at drinking and operating under a high alcohol, blood alcohol level. I mean, we could drink a fifth of whiskey, go to bed at 3, wake up at 5, and run 6 miles.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different kind of training.
I mean, some of it is kind of a rite of passage, right? It's like, it's a test of toughness. If you can drink all night and train all day. I mean, is that part of the culture?
Oh, it's definitely the culture. Yeah. No, that was not just me. It's
right.
Almost everybody, not everybody, but the vast majority. Yeah.
That's what I mean. You were just expected to be able to perform no matter what.
Yes.
Yeah. What were you giving up? You just listed you have a laundry list of things that you were doing. What were you giving up to make that possible? I mean, you were drinking, fighting, going to school, working. I mean, that's 25 hours of a day.
Sanity.
Yeah.
I was, as long as I could, if I was drinking, I didn't have to remember. And then if I was busy, I didn't have to think about things that I'd done and seen. So I think it was just basically a big distraction. Get my mind off of things. I've lost count of how many guys that I served with who have committed suicide or overdosed on drugs. I've lost count. Too many. Way too many.
You get to Murfreesboro. What's the leadership like there?
I'm not going to talk about that.
That's fine. What did you learn while you were there? Let's take that direction.
Man, so when I graduated police academy, so I was in the police academy. I was selected to be a squad leader, one of 3. And so I think there was 45 people in my class. I was a squad leader. I remember my roommates when they found out that they were going to be rooming with the squad leader, who was a Marine and older. Here I am, 30. I'm 30, I'm 31 years old and going into the police academy. And they were pretty nervous. They were like, and then they were like, "Oh man, you're actually pretty cool." Because we would go out and stay out past curfew, and the academy administrator, he was a real strict guy, but he really liked me because he liked Marines, and his name was Chuck. And so we would go out on the town, and I'd be like, they're like, "Oh, we got to get back before curfew." I was like, "I already called Chuck. Don't worry about it. We're good. We're good." But I mean, I had a good time. I graduated the police academy as a squad leader, and we had a good time in there. And then I got back to the Murfreesboro Police Department. Well, most agencies, when you graduate the police academy and you join the force, you go through several months of field training with a field training officer. I did 4 days of field training, and then they're like, "Here's the keys. Good luck." And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. It was crazy. So I just went out and I started running traffic. I would run radar and just pull over a whole bunch of cars. And I'll never forget the very first time I had this big old black dude fresh out of the penitentiary, just jacked to the gills, jump out of the car immediately and starts throwing up his hands. He's like, I'm going back to prison. I'm going back to prison. I'm like, whoa. So let's talk about this. There is no need for you to go back to prison. I said, let's just calm down, have a seat on the trunk. What's going on? He's like, well, my driver's license is suspended. I was like, okay, I don't even know what that is. It don't sound too bad. So, I mean, I was just clueless. It was sink or swim. And you basically, my field training was on my own, learning just, so I would, call dispatch. And then I was like, hey, how was this? What do I need to work on? What do I need to do? And they were so short staffed. Mm-hmm. And we had sold our house in DuQuoin, and we were staying with my mom until we found a house in Jackson County. And so I didn't want to be there. I broke the record. I worked 55 consecutive days in a row. I broke the record for most consecutive days worked at that department, just because I was soaking up the overtime and I didn't want to be at my mom's house. Mm-hmm. So, but it was starting your law enforcement career that way is definitely different.
Not recommended.
No, I definitely would not recommend that. Not to anybody. No. Pretty dangerous, actually.
I would assume that it is. I mean, that's in the blue collar sector or the civilian world, we call it onboarding. That onboarding process was pretty short.
Yeah.
I mean, we do 30 days for someone that's answering the phone.
Right.
So
yeah.
So yeah. It's wild.
Yeah.
Here's a gun and a badge and the keys. Go get some.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm very interested in the awards that you got. Walk me through one or two of those.
The first one I showed up to was a house. The smoke detector was going off. There's an elderly lady on the front porch. The door was locked. She kept saying, my baby's inside, my baby's inside. And, I'm thinking a baby. And so I kicked in the door. Well, when I kicked in the door, I mean, that whole house was just engulfed in smoke. So she tried to run in. This lady's probably 80 years old. And so I'm like, grab her. I'm like, just wait out here. I crawl in. I find probably a guy in his mid 40s passed out from probably alcohol and drugs. I smacked him in the face trying to wake him up. Doesn't happen. I grab a hold of him, drag him outside. He wasn't very happy that I rescued him. It was very bizarre. Actually, when he came to, he was disappointed. So, but his mom wasn't. His mom was happy. So
you didn't save his life; you ruined his death.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
that's the way he felt about it. Yeah. And then there was another house. This was, of course, that one was middle of the day. The next one was probably 2 or 3 in the morning. We're looking. Somebody called in seeing smoke, and I found the house. And whenever I pull up, the flames are on the outside. The whole house is completely engulfed in flames. And I'm thinking, Lord, if there's somebody in there, they're probably already dead. When I kicked in the door, this one was dead bolted. It took a long time to kick this thing in. Matter of fact, I kicked it so many times, I stopped to look in the window to make sure nobody was coming. Because when it did go, it was going to go. But I got the door busted open. I ran in. And when I ran in, I met by a little old lady. And she's like, what's going on? And I said, your house, look around you. Your house is completely in flames. I said, let's go. I got to get you out of here. And she's like, hold on. My dogs are in the back. I said, your dogs will make it out. And then as I'm leaning out, she's like, oh, and my husband. I'm like, oh, all right, well, priorities. And so I get her outside, and then I go back in for her husband, who is just now waking up out of bed, and he's stark naked, not a thing on. And then he's digging through his dresser to get some clothes. I said, we ain't got time to find clothes. I said, I will get you a blanket or something to cover up with. There is no time. We got to go. So I got him outside and and pulled him out. So
No clue the house was on fire.
no clue that the house was on fire. I mean, the flames was on the interior walls and the exterior of the house. The whole house was completely, I mean, by the time it was wild. The first one was a kitchen fire. The first house was a kitchen fire. The whole house was just completely full of smoke, so thick that you had to crawl on the floor. That's how thick the smoke was. This one was just flames everywhere.
How long did you
So,
stay in Murphy with that department?
5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, 5 years. And then I did a lateral transfer to Carbondale,
Okay. That's what I thought.
bigger agency.
Yeah.
Was able to get on with this. I always wanted to be a SWAT operator.
Mhm.
Got on with their SRT team, although they never used us. It's too scary. The public is scared of you guys.
Do you want to do a whole episode on Carbondale?
Oh,
God.
I'll tell you, we had a barricaded gunman with hostages in
Mhm.
some apartments. Deputy chief called us out, so we go up to the department, get suited up in our SWAT gear, ready to go. Chief finds out, says, "Go home. We're not using you. We'll just wait it out." Known gunman, we know that he has a gun. We know that he has hostages inside the apartment, and you're gonna say no, go home. Awesome. Great work.
Mhm. Seems correct for that town.
Yeah.
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 And those two are neighboring towns, what we're talking about.
Yes.
Murfreesboro and Carbondale. They're neighboring. They're have you been through Carbondale lately?
I was there for Christmas, just this last Christmas, but I did not go into Carbondale.
I went down there for the first time a couple months ago. The first time in years since I've been through there. It's not getting any better. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
They don't have the right leadership. You got to stand up. You got to stand up.
They don't have the right anything. To see a university town just
when the George Floyd stuff kicked off, and matter of fact, all the riots were happening. I was in Texas house hunting at that time because I had made up my mind. I saw the writing on the wall, and I said, "There's no way I can do this until I retire and draw a pension from this. This is not going to work out. I'm going to lose my mind if I stay here for another 15 plus years. It's not going to work out." So I was actually in Texas looking for houses and looking around the area, and a friend calls me and says, "Hey, they're rioting. They're trying to break down the doors of the police department. They're spray painting and doing, destroying everything." And the chief said, just let them do it. Unless they actually get inside the building, then you can start making arrests. But until then, just let them do whatever they want to do. So I was like, I got it. I can't get out of here quick enough.
How long were you in Carbondale?
4 years.
Okay. Wow.
Actually, 4.5 years.
Mm-hmm. So in the 9 years there, what were some of the big takeaways? I mean, obviously I'm interested in leadership, but what did you learn about leadership? What did you learn about yourself? Like, what were some of the takeaways? Because I know moving to Texas is that's kind of the next step, but I'm interested in your takeaway.
Well, I was a field training officer, and I loved training new cops because I knew what it was like to not have leadership train you upright. And there's little bitty nuances in law enforcement that most people don't think of, and most even good field training officers don't teach everything. Like just for one example,
Mhm.
when you pull up behind a car, when you're stopping at an intersection and you stop behind a car, I always taught my rookies, don't you need to stop to where you can still see the rear tires of that car. Because if something happens and you need to get out of here in a hurry, if you are too close to the car in front of you, you're not getting out of here. You're stuck. So always stop with your where you can see the rear tires of the vehicle in front of you. If you can't see them, you're too close. Just little things. And also with new guys, you in law enforcement is constant adrenaline dumps all the time. So whenever they would get that adrenaline dump, like right before a traffic stop or something, I would say, take a drink of water. Why? Take a drink of water. If you take a drink of water, it will naturally slow your heart rate down. You don't even have to think about it. Just take a drink of water. They're like, man, why does that work? I don't know. It just does. But they would always be like, I mean, we were doing a foot patrol one time and we heard automatic gunfire, not very far from where we was. So we jumped in the car and started heading to it. And I could tell that they was pretty amped up and getting nervous. And I'm just like, just take a couple deep breaths. And they're like, why don't you ever get freaked out or nervous? I'm like, if I was getting freaked out and getting amped up, what do you think you're gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
It's only going to amplify you. So
Plus, I've had RPG shot over my head.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had RPGs and AK-47 rounds land literally inches from me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just you got to keep your emotions in check. Whenever and it's not like I got adrenaline dumps all the time, but whenever I did it, I knew how to regulate it. So it's all about regulating your emotions and
emotional discipline.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I had this question recently. I don't know if there's a parallel to this, but in our blue collar boot camp, I had a question that said, what do you do if somebody on your team basically loses their temper and they're throwing things and cussing and yelling, even if it's not at somebody, they're just really acting out. What do you do? Or what would you do? That was the question. And I said, well, first thing I've got to do is I've got to recognize that and go, okay, what have I done wrong as a leader that's enabled this?
Yeah.
Clearly there are some expectations here that aren't understood, and they somehow think that they can behave this way. I said, that's the first thing I've got to ask. Second thing is that we've got to diffuse this situation, and we're going to have a conversation about it. But that conversation is not going to be me attacking you about your behavior. It's going to be me understanding why you chose to behave that way. And what I've learned is disarming somebody is not making accusations. It's simply just what you said earlier. And first day of the academy is communication, asking questions, and disarming them. Okay, what is going on right now? Like, help me understand what's happening. And being able to disarm them, that puts you in a position to discipline, enforce consequences, or set new parameters, whatever the case is. But my parallel to that is, I think as a leader, you have to determine if you're going to react or if you're going to respond. And I think a lot of people, and when you're dealing with lives and not livelihoods, there's an increased level of adrenaline and risk. And so when you're rolling up to these calls that you're talking about and that adrenaline takes over, you have to determine if you're going to react to that individual or if you're going to respond to them, and to be able to get them on a level where they can operate and follow and really follow you as a leader and be able to think through?
Well, in law enforcement, you like domestic violence and domestic battery calls are the most dangerous calls to go on. And, as I'm rolling up on that kind of call, I'm already in my mind rehearsing all the different scenarios, all the different positions and different outcomes that there could be. So as I rehearse these things in my mind, I'm better prepared for them whenever I arrive. So I had a lady come at me with a very large butcher knife. Probably the blade on it was probably probably 10 inches. Big butcher knife. So later, let me just tell the story first, and I'll put it into context. So I got dispatched to a call of a lady threatening to kill people with a knife, and she's crazy. She has a knife at this little apartment. I get dispatched with another officer for backup. Well, as I arrive, I get out. I don't see her. I relay this to dispatch, whenever I first arrive. Well, that other officer disregarded and just kept on going, and he went and assisted another call. So I'm there by myself at this point. I knock on the doors of the reporting parties. I talk to them, and they're giving me the description of her. And I'm talking with one of them, and then they're like, well, there she is. This is a long apartment complex. We're outside on the ground level. She's probably 50, 60 yards away from me. I can see the large knife in her hand. So I have a lot of time to think before she gets to me. I have a lot of time to assess a whole lot of details about the situation. So as I'm walking towards her and she's walking towards me, I'm telling her to drop the knife. She's saying, no, you're going to have to kill me. I'm not going to drop the knife. And I'm like, okay, well, then I'm looking her up and down. I notice that she's an older lady. She's out of shape. She's not in good physical condition. She's also wearing flip-flops. So she's not going to be real agile. And then then at the same time, I'm playing in my head what I can do instead of shooting and killing this lady. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, if she lunges at me, I can just deflect her, probably trip her, and then, we can fight over the knife and I'll put her in handcuffs. I'm thinking if she keeps the knife at her side, I can just give her a good, hard front kick right to the solar plexus and just probably do a lot of damage with that. She's going to drop the knife at that point. I never even drew my gun. I pulled my taser out. And a lot of people think, oh, why don't they think, well, they watch cop videos. Why didn't you just tase them? Tasers are not that. I mean, when they work great. But if you don't get both probes to stick, they're worthless. Mm. So I waited on her to get close enough to me to hit me with the knife, and I tased her, and she fell, and I grabbed the knife and tossed it, and then I put her in handcuffs. I went back, wrote my report, and my SWAT commander read the report later, and I was in the break room. He said, why didn't you shoot her? And I explained everything that I just explained to you, because obviously that stuff didn't go in my report. And he said, good work. That's awesome. So.
How often do people jump to lethal force?
Not often.
No.
Pretty rare.
Good.
Because in all honesty, most most bad guys, when good guys show up with guns, flee. So, uh, yeah,
When'd you move south?
July of 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And what did you do? What did you start out doing? And did you go straight to Fort Worth?
I live in Burleson. It's a city just south of Fort Worth.
Yeah.
10 minutes from Fort Worth.
Yeah.
10 minutes south of Fort Worth.
You went straight there?
Yeah. Well, actually, we sold our house. I moved in with a police officer buddy, moved into his basement for a couple weeks.
Now you've had a second child by this time too, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
We had
okay.
our second child in 08.
Okay.
And my son decided to stay in Illinois for a year before joining us in Texas.
Okay.
But yeah, so I mean, I got into security,
Mhm.
and and then it has just been unbelievable. I had a lot of time on my hands, so I started going down a whole lot of rabbit holes on what's going on with the world today. And I really started to freak out seeing what was happening. And I didn't know what to do. So one day I just opened up my Bible and I thought, well, God will know what to do. And so I started reading the Bible about 2 years ago, and I've read yesterday afternoon, I finished reading the Bible for the 7th time, cover to cover, in less than 2 years. And so God has given me and blessed me with this opportunity to study his word and get in his word. And so I have felt called to share the gospel with men. And as a matter of fact, in November of 23, a prophetic word was spoken over me saying that God is calling me to ministry, and specifically men's ministry. And I had no idea what that was going to look like. So, but I was like, Lord, if that's what you want me to do, I don't want anything to do with this world. I'm here for you. I'll do whatever it is you want me to do. And so, a few months later, after that prophetic word, my daughter, who was a high school cheerleader, her friends started having a Bible study on their own. They started calling me on during their Wednesday Bible studies, and at the same time I was going to a home group, and they had a whole bunch of questions, and then finally she said, "Dad, will you just lead us in the Bible study?" And I said, "I'd be honored to." And so I led them in a Bible study for a little while, and put a picture on Facebook of us doing a Bible study. And one of the dads said, "When is the men's Bible study?" And then I thought, well, all right, I can do that. And that's what God's called me to do. So I invited all the dads of the cheerleaders to meet up at my house and do a Bible study. And they all showed up, and they've been showing up since July of last year. So I've been leading a men's Bible study every Wednesday. So it's been awesome. And the things that God has done in this little Bible study in everybody's lives has just been unbelievable. It's been pretty awesome to witness.
That leads me to a question, because you and I had discussed that a little bit when we spoke on the phone. There's something that I've been drawn to a lot lately, probably because of my past behaviors and upbringing and everything up in my 40 plus years. How do you define a good man?
Well, I don't, but God does. Uh, John chapter 15, verse 13. No greater love hath no man that he lay down his life for his brother or his friends. That's the BRJ version. But essentially that's what it is. No greater love has anyone. If you to lay down your life for your fellow brother or your neighbor. And God says, of all the commandments, the greatest of these is love, to love your neighbor as yourself. That's the ultimate command, is love. Without love, yeah, I mean, love is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the kind of woke ideological love that that they talk about today, that they're deceived by the enemy. Oh, love is love. No, love is not love. God is love.
A lot of this shows up in behavior, and the other reason I asked that question is I think that to be a good man, you have to be a good leader. You have to lead yourself. I think you have to lead your family. Not a leadership by definition of business context, but I think just the aspect of being a good leader in what that is, and that's something that I've been really, really focusing on lately. Probably because everything in my life is good now, and I think it's easy to make excuses when life is when you're making your life not good. I don't want to say life wasn't good. Like, I wasn't making my life good.
Right.
I was making all of the decisions that ended in a bad result, and I'm seeing it in people that I know, and I'm seeing it in relationships, and it's, to me, there's this there is lack of love. It is superficial. There's lack of commitment. It's all superficial or surface level. There's no discipline. There's a lot of missing pieces now in what I think that a man should have, and not in a masculine or toxic masculine. And this is we can talk about this too, just because of the exposure of toxic masculinity in what was glorified. But I don't mean it in the sense of masculinity. I just mean it in the sense of being a good man. So that's why I asked that question. It's been something that's weighing on my mind a lot lately. And a lot of it's come up in reflection, and a lot of it's come in practicing gratitude with where I'm at now. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a question in there, but
I got it. Well, Jesus said it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than to enter the gates of heaven. So what he meant is, I'm sorry, I left the first part out. It's easier for a rich man to go through it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. So when you are wealthy and you have everything that this world has to offer and life is good, you don't need God. You are God. I mean, you are the God of your own life. What do you need God for? Everything is well. But your life is just is a mist. It's a vapor. It's a blink of an eye. The time that we have on this earth is just so minuscule compared to eternity. There is no amount of wealth that you can obtain to buy your way into heaven. There's no amount of good deeds that you can do to earn your way into heaven. You can only enter into heaven by putting your faith in Jesus Christ and what he did on the cross to forgive us of our sins. Without that, there is no eternity in heaven. And like it or not, whether people believe in it or not, we are all going to live for eternity. But we get to choose where we spend eternity. Uh, the gift is it's a free gift. It's a gift already paid for by Christ on the cross, what he did on the cross for our sins. He is there waiting for everyone to open the door and receive the gift. You can't force a gift on somebody. You have to receive it. And the choice is yours to whether or not you receive the gift or not. But doing things on your own, I did things on my own for a long time, and it wasn't going too well. And I'll tell you, I drifted away from God once I did my lateral transfer to Carbondale. I drifted away from God for those 4 years and ended up drinking a lot again, and whatever excuse you want to use, having to just deal with all of the scum of the earth that I was dealing with and all the things. It's really no excuse, but I drifted away from God, and then God never took his hand off of me. He brought me back, and now he has, by spending the amount of time in his word that I'm able to spend, God has revealed so much to me, and has really showed me how to love. Because I prayed that was my prayer for a long time. God, teach me how to love people the way you love people. Because I was just impatient with people. I'm just like, what is wrong with you? Why are you so stupid?
That's the BJ I know.
What is the matter with you? Why are you so dumb? And then but that's not what God has called us to be. So through the Holy Spirit and allowing God to work in my life, man, he is just he's done it. He's just brought me full circle, and I am not the man I am today because of me. I am the man I am today because of Jesus.
Is that how, and I'm purposely directing this, is that how you were able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically reteach yourself, in what a man is supposed to be, and unlearn the toxic masculinity that we were immersed and indoctrinated in.
Right. Well, it's all in the word, and Jesus is the example. Servant leadership. Jesus is the ultimate example of servant leadership. He washed his apostles' feet before he went on the cross at the Last Supper. He washed their feet as an example. Jesus is the perfect example for forgiveness. His forgiveness is limitless. His compassion. It doesn't matter how many times you mess up. I'm still a sinner. I still mess up. But when I do, I'm convicted of it, and I turn to God, and that's the difference between true fellowship with the Lord and what the American church, most of the American church is today. People like to believe in a God that saves, but not in a God that changes their lives. They like the idea of being saved, and they like the idea of spending eternity in heaven, but they don't like the idea of having their lives transformed to be and look more like Jesus Christ.
I want what you had to offer, but I want it my way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think a lot of people also, when they hear servant leadership, they mistake it for servitude.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And I think that's a huge misunderstanding of what servant leadership really means. And that was something that I learned as well in leadership in general, because that was a misunderstanding for me early on. It's not servitude.
Yeah.
True servant leadership is leadership.
Yeah. And truth. I mean, God is truth. His word is the truth. And speaking the truth without fear of repercussion. I will tell you that the company that I work for, they said that if you don't get the jab before the new year, you're all going to be terminated. And I told them I'd rather live homeless underneath one of these overpasses than do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't do it, and fully expecting to be fired.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, because it was new, they said you're going to be terminated on New Year's Day. I had to work that Friday. I said, well, I've not used any sick time. I told my wife, I said, hey, it's New Year's Eve. I'm not going to work. I'm calling in sick. What do you want to do? So
you still have the job.
I do.
Yeah.
I do still have a job. I think they realized that there was more people refusing than they were going to be able to contend with.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. One of the joys of being self-employed is I don't get wrapped up in that, the politics or the bureaucracy of it, because that is one of the benefits. There's obviously a lot of things that are not, I mean, it's all on you, right? Being self-employed. But when all of that was going down, I'm like, I'm really glad that I'm not having to have that conversation with anybody.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I know the Carbondale Police Department forced that after I left, and I was pretty disappointed to see nobody stood up. Not a single, nobody in leadership stood up and said, or even not people not in leadership, just in patrol, just saying, hey, let's all stand up together and against this. None of us want to get this. How about we all stand up and say, if you're going to fire one, you're going to have to fire all of us. And good luck protecting these streets with your entire force gone. What do you think the city would do then? They would back down.
Right.
But nobody had the testicular fortitude to stand up and just say no. Very disappointing.
Yeah. Throughout your life and lessons up to this, up into this conversation, I'm really curious, what has been your biggest lesson or takeaway about leadership?
I like I said at the beginning, I really feel like true leadership is you're either born with it or you're not. But if you're not born with it, you can learn it if you're learning it from the right place. And if you're looking for the ultimate example of leadership, you have to turn to the New Testament and to Jesus, because he is the ultimate example of what real leadership looks like. And we are naturally born sinners, and so even once you are born again with Christ, you are filled with the Holy Spirit, and you're living by the Holy Spirit, our flesh still wants to sin. So we are told, the Apostle Paul tells us to capture every thought in your mind and test it to the will of God. Well, how can you capture every thought in your mind and test it unless you know what the word says? You can't. So we got a bunch of people, a lot of Christians going to church on Sunday and getting their hour and a half fix, and then through the rest of the week, allowing their own thoughts to dictate their day-to-day lives. Well, it's not gonna work out well, because you're called to capture every thought in your mind. And the only way to test it is to know the Word of God. And the only way to know the Word of God is to read the Word of God. So that would be my biggest.
Yeah. What else you got that we haven't touched on, my friend? Otherwise, that's a pretty big mic drop moment. So
Yeah, I think you're right. That's the mic drop right there. Know the Word of God and test every thought that comes through your mind with the Word of God, and to do it that way. And so, yeah, I mean, pretty much my life in a nutshell. There's a whole lot of other little stories and nuances throughout that time, but yeah, I mean, I don't want to bore everybody to sleep.
it's all right. I'm indebted to you for spending this time with me. It's been good to see you.
You too. I really appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Of course. Appreciate everybody spending this time with us. Until next time, get out there, get shit done. Be proud to be a tradesman. See ya.